Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia if you're new here, and today I figured we would try someplace a little different. We are in my bedroom, and the main reason for the switch was, if you've watched any of my videos up until now, and there aren't that many, so you might not have, I really struggle with glare in my glasses, and that's because when I film in my living room, my big south-facing windows are right across from me, and I love them. They give me so much natural light. They make me feel so happy, but they're horrible for when I'm filming and wearing glasses. Trying to kind of figure it out, so I figured we come in the bedroom today. We're still by my beautiful south-facing windows, however, we are to the side. I'm not seeing any glare in the viewfinder, and I think we'll try this out, see how it goes. If we like it, we'll stick with it, and I'll redo these shelves, move the bins out of the way, and put more of my books on display. But that housekeeping note aside, I primarily just wanted to go over my January reading recap today, plus what I am currently reading and what I am hoping to read in February, because January I fell into a really big book slump. I'm not entirely sure why. I think part of it was work and coming off of the holidays and jumping right into like New Year's and goals and routines, and these are my goals for the year. I think I just kind of needed to step back and be like, chill, because I didn't really get a break during the holidays, and then jumping right into the New Year's and New Year's resolutions just kind of. But anyways, like I said, I didn't read a whole lot in January. I read 2 books, which is not a lot for me because I normally read about 4 or 5 books a month. So let's just get right into it. So during the holidays, I came across a list on Bookstagram for completed fantasy romance series, and the Elf Queen series really caught my attention. But despite this series being a trilogy, I will not be reading the 3rd book, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the first book in the series is Belle Before the Elf Queen by J.M. Curl, and this book is a fantasy romance book, but we get elves, where there's no fae. There's no bad boys. We got elves. And it's very Lord of the Rings-esque, if you will, but I really liked it. It felt kind of like a nice change of pace to have elven towns and cities and societies versus fae, and it's a little thing. It's a little thing, but I liked it. There were also some pretty solid tropes in this book: enemies to lovers, mates, touch her you die, and the banter was pretty good. Our male main character has a lot of swoon-worthy lines. I really enjoyed his parts of the book. He was a little sarcastic too, but he said a lot of swoon-worthy things. I will say this book was, I don't want to say boring. There wasn't much happening with the plot. There were times where I was like, is something gonna happen? Because not much is happening. And there also wasn't too much world buildup. You know, there was the elven lands and the human lands, and it was kind of that. We got a few bits and pieces here and there, but nothing to really paint like a big cohesive picture. If there was a map in this book, I didn't see it because I listened to this series as audiobooks, which is a whole nother thing, because the male narrator who narrates these books, he takes a little bit of an adjustment period to get used to, because when you first start listening, he sounds like he's screaming and it's a little jarring. But if you can get past that, then great. But one thing that I didn't really like with the mate trope was that when our male main character, Thane, was speaking about like his mate bond with Layala, our female main character, it felt like it was just ripped right out of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Like, it just felt so eerily similar to what I had already read that it just kind of like took me out. I was just kind of like, oh, this feels a little too copycat. I don't think that was the author's intent, and I'm not calling the author a copycat, but I do think that the mate trope could have been done a little bit differently. Also because the mate trope is very one-sided. Thane and Layala are mated as basically infants. Layala was fresh out of the womb when they were mated by Thane's father, the king at the time, because Layala was born with magic. It's very one-sided. Thane talks about how he can feel what Layala feels through their bond, but Thane talks about the bond very lovingly. He very much has built up Layala in his head as his mate, and it's not the same case for Layala, and so it feels very one-sided. And like I said earlier, when Thane is talking about the mate bond, he sounds so much like Rhys in A Court of Mist and Fury. It kind of took me out for a minute because I was like, wait, why am I having like deja vu? The other thing I really didn't like with Layala is that she gets hit with the, you know, told lies all my life and doesn't use critical thinking skills until the very last minute when she has to, otherwise the book just wouldn't make sense to continue. And it's so annoying. Just use your brain, girl. Just think for once in your life. Like, stop blindly trusting everyone and stop assuming things and just think. Like, apply just a little bit of critical thinking skills, a little bit of logic, and maybe you wouldn't be in this mess. I will say, this book wasn't horrendous. There were times where I had to push myself to get through it, but I really like Thane, and despite Layala's shortcomings, I really liked Layala too, and so this book gets a solid 3 stars out of 5 stars, because did I love it? No. Did I absolutely hate it? Also no. The second book in the Elf Queen series is Long Live the Elf Queen by J.M. Curl, and this book picks up pretty much right after the events of the first book. This book was also, it wasn't a hit, but it also wasn't entirely a miss either. So in this book, quite a bit more does happen, but I do feel like there were things that were used almost as a distraction instead of furthering the plot, like the whole Thane and Layala and their like entourage going to the Dragon Court felt so drawn out and almost unnecessary for them to be there as long as they were, and not just getting to the point and offing the character that needed to be offed was just, it was a little frustrating. It was a little frustrating. The beginning of the second book started out really well. I did like the beginning of this book. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of recovery from the ending of the first book. And so the first half of the second book, I was sold. I was having a good time. But the second half of the second book is where things honestly just started to fall really flat. And not only did they fall really flat, things also just kind of got weird, and the end of the second book is pretty much when I was like, yeah, I'm out. I'm done. I'm not continuing the series. But back on track. I will say, the bits that I did like of this book, I did like that we got to see other courts. Like I mentioned, the Dragon Court was very, very fascinating. I don't think it was dragons done right because they're not fully dragons, but it was still a very interesting aspect of the book. And I also really like the character development we get, not just with Thane and Layala, but also with some of the other characters as well. But I really, really did like the sort of deepening of their connection. It was really nice also to get to know them more as characters, individually and as mates. Oh, I didn't give this one a rating. But anyways, I digress. Before I get into why I'm not continuing this trilogy, I will just say I'm gonna give the second book another 3 stars out of 5 stars, maybe 3.5 out of 5 stars, because it did get a little better, but it also really turned me off to the series as a whole. Alright, so just very quickly, without spoiling too much, I do just want to put a little bit of a disclaimer that this is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you want to read the Elf Queen series and you don't want to be spoiled, I will put a timestamp in the description. Just skip to that, because that'll be what I'm currently reading and what I'm looking forward to reading, and then you don't have to listen to spoilers. But if you don't care, or you read this series and you just want to kind of hear my thoughts about it, here they are. So at the end of the second book, the author pretty much reveals that Lane and Thayala, the 2 characters we've spent 2 books essentially rooting for, are actually lost gods. They're not actually mates, and they're not actually even supposed to be together. The Dark Mage, who has been haunting Layala's dreams, is actually her real mate and her husband. Hell. And I'm just kind of like, so you're telling me that these 2 characters that I have spent 2 books investing my time and energy in are a lie? I felt like I got punked. I genuinely felt like I got punked, and I really didn't like it. It turned me off. I am also not a love triangle person, so the thought of having 2 like established characters enter into a love triangle was just, no. I'm sorry. I didn't like it. It just wasn't for me. Maybe when I'm not still feeling like I got played, I might consider reading the 3rd book, but until then, I don't see it happening. So with that being said, let's jump into what I'm reading lately, because I am actually looking forward to the slump being over and getting back to my TBR list. Okay, so what I am currently reading and what I am hoping to read. I'm just gonna kind of speed through this. But first up is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I got a copy from my library of this book right when the book slump hit, and I really tried. I got about 10% into the book and I was just like, I can't do this. And it sucks because right where I left off was right when Pei, our main character, finds out that she's in the trials. And I was just like, wow, what a great time to have a book slump, Cynthia. What a great time to return a book you've been waiting weeks to get a copy of just because you're in a book slump. Great. I returned my copy. I let my slump pass over the last few weeks, and now we are back at it, baby. I am probably about another 10% into it. The trials are right about to start. I literally just got a copy of it like yesterday. So I pretty much just picked up where I was. The next book on the list is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, and look at this cover. Like, are you serious? It is gorgeous. I didn't even read what this book was about. It popped up on my Kindle Unlimited and I said, read for free. But this book is actually interesting. I have a feeling it's gonna be dragons done right. It is a fantasy romance. There's a lot of like world building and old gods. I think I spent 5 minutes when I first got my copy of this book literally just reading through the glossary. And I actually really like books that do that. The map was also very, very fascinating. So I just, from the cover, was immediately intrigued. And I'm about 20% into this book and I'm pretty much sold. I am very excited to read this book. Also upcoming is The Everqueen by L.J. Andrews. I believe last fall I read The Everqueen and I really loved it. And that cliffhanger, I can forgive L.J. Andrews for that cliffhanger as long as The Everqueen is just as good, if not better, than The Everking. But The Everqueen is pretty much the continuation of Eric and Livia's story, and I can't wait to see how it wraps up. I really can't. So that's what I'm currently reading. And then coming up on the docket for February is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. Another victim of my reading slump. I got the copy around the same time I got Powerless, around New Year's, and then my slump hit and I needed a minute. Your girl just needed a minute. I needed to just veg out and not do much of anything, and so Ruthless Vows got sent back to the library. I am still waiting on my copy of Ruthless Vows to come through, and I think it should be about 2 weeks, my Libby app says, so that will probably be read in February. I am also starting the Crescent City series again, so House of Earth and Blood. I have a hold on, and that should also be coming in about 2 weeks, depending on, other people's reading times and if the library gets more copies. But I did try to read House of Earth and Blood, which is the first Crescent City book, back in December, but there's so much world building, and from what I read online and had a friend told me, the first half of the book is literally just info dumping, and I'm just like, are you serious? The book is thick, and I have to spend the first half of it wading through info dumping, so we'll see. But I also do want to continue the series because House of Sky and Breath kind of crosses over with ACOTAR. I think about the ACOTAR characters probably on a daily basis. It's a very unhealthy codependent relationship, and that's fine because they're fictional, they don't exist. So, and then the last book I have on my list for February is A Feather So Black by Lyra Celine, because I received an art copy, so that was very exciting. And I did receive an art copy from the publisher, and I'm very excited to dive into that and talk about some of my thoughts. Something I do also want to start doing this year is talk about the books that I DNF each month, just because I feel like it's important. And when I think back to all the books I read in 2023, I read 53 books and I probably DNF'd about the same amount, and that's wild. That's also a very dramatic statement. But in January, I received an art copy of An Education in Malice by T.S. Gibson, and I unfortunately DNF'd it about halfway through. I wasn't feeling it, so to kind of wrap up my thoughts on that, there were a few things I did like. I did like the writing. I liked the kind of mysteriousness right off the bat. The atmosphere of the book was also enjoyable. It's a sapphic, dark academia, and dark academia, like, say less. I did also like the academics meets religion aesthetic of this book, which I don't normally like. I'm not really a big fan of religion in with academics, but it is an all-girl school. So what I did not like the obsession the characters had with each other, because it was very unhealthy. It was borderline toxic. I was not a fan. It also felt like the plot didn't really have a true direction. It felt like it would start and then kind of go in different directions, and that was just kind of annoying. The characters were also very dull, which was annoying because they didn't start out dull. They started out feeling like very independent characters with their very own independent personalities, and like by the halfway point of the book, both of our main characters, Carmilla and Laura, they started to sound like each other, and I don't know. And I will say, I don't know if that was done on purpose because by that point they were spending a lot more time with each other, but I still felt like the individuality of each character got lost a little bit. Laura's infatuation with Carmilla also felt very insta-lovey, and I didn't like that. It just kind of gave me the ick. And by the time I DNF'd at about 50%, I wasn't feeling it anymore. It felt like a chore to read the book, and any time reading starts to feel like a chore, I know that it's time to go. But that is the only book that I DNF'd in January because, like I said, I didn't read a lot in January, so. But yeah, there you have it. That's what I read in January. That's what I'm hoping to read in February, the books that I DNF'd. I don't regret starting the Elf Queen series. I just don't like the direction that it went in from the second book. I felt like it was almost kind of a slap in the face to all the readers that became invested in Thane and Lyala, and that's all I'm gonna say because I already put a spoiler warning and I don't want to have to put another one. I'm very, very happy to be out of my reading slump and to get back into it, and I'm really looking forward to a chock-full February and getting back to my TBR list. And I feel like I tend to ramble in my outros, so we're gonna skip that. And I will say, I did like filming in my bedroom. My camera is just on my bed, and I actually really like it. It also helps that it's a very cloudy day out today and the lighting is pristine. But with that being said, I'm gonna skip the rambling today. I would love to know what you're reading, and if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned today, I'd love to hear your thoughts about them. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.